Hey everyone, welcome to a deep dive all about this book you asked for, The Richest Man in Babylon
Oh, yeah, this one's a classic for sure.
by George S. Clason. Gotta be
Uh,
good, right? Over 2 million copies sold.
for sure. It just keeps inspiring people generation after generation.
But, I've heard some mixed
Oh,
reviews.
yeah.
Yeah, some folks say it changed their lives.
Mm,
Others, well, they think it's a little outdated.
interesting.
So we're going to dig in today, see if this ancient Babylonian advice still works in 2024.
Let's get into it. You know what's really cool is the author himself, George S. Clason.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about him.
He was actually a soldier first, then he became this successful entrepreneur.
Wow.
And get this, he started sharing his financial tips through pamphlets.
Pamphlets. Really?
Yeah, back in 1926. Banks and insurance companies were giving them out, and they were often these parables set in ancient Babylon.
Parables. It's so creative.
Yeah. And eventually, all those pamphlets, they became the richest man in Babylon.
Ancient Babylon teaching us about money today. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's talk about the big idea everyone's always talking about. Pay yourself first.
Mm-hmm.
10% of your income straight into savings.
That's the foundation.
It's so hard, though. Why is
Yeah.
it so important?
Clason really stresses that being consistent with saving, even a little bit, it builds financial security. Like he's got this story about a chariot maker. This guy, he's struggling financially.
Yeah, that's relatable.
Right. But every time he gets paid, he puts some aside.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Clason's point is that even small savings, over time, they add up.
Like saving for your future chariots, even when you can barely afford the wheels right now.
Exactly. That's why people connect with it so much, even if they're struggling.
That makes sense.
He takes these complicated money ideas and makes them into stories everyone can understand.
I've heard people say, though, that the book is all about saving and doesn't talk much about other stuff like investing.
That's a fair point. It is very focused on saving as the main way to build wealth.
Hmm.
I mean, there are parts where characters invest in businesses,
Okay.
but it doesn't get deep into investment strategies the way some other books do.
So it's like, learn to save first, then figure out the investing stuff later.
Exactly. You got it. And that actually leads into something really interesting. People say this book is both a classic and outdated. How's that possible?
Right. How can it be both?
Well, we have to remember when it was written.
Okay.
Back then, things were different, right? Society had different ideas about, well, pretty much everything.
Like what? Give me an example.
Okay, there's this part where it talks about women managing household expenses,
Okay.
and it kind of implies that that's all women do with money.
Oof. Yeah, I can see how that wouldn't sit well today.
Right, it reflects those old-fashioned gender roles.
Makes you cringe a little.
It does, but even with those parts, there are still these timeless ideas that are super valuable even now,
Like what?
like mastering your desires.
Oh, tell me more about that.
Clason is basically saying, you gotta prioritize. Needs over wants. Don't just spend on everything you see.
That's good advice.
Especially today. Think about it.
Right.
Instant gratification everywhere, online shopping, you name it. It's so easy to blow your money.
Totally. Ads are everywhere. It's hard to resist.
Clason's saying, be mindful. Don't lose sight of your long-term goals just to buy stuff you don't really need.
Like, before you buy that fancy chariot, make sure you can afford the stable.
Exactly. I love that. You know, I'm really curious to get your take on all this.
Oh, yeah.
As a millennial, what do you think? Does this book still speak to people your age?
It's a mix for me. Some parts I'm like, come on, class, and get with the times.
Yeah.
But I get why it's still popular. It's like this back-to-basics approach that cuts through all the noise today.
I see what you mean. How so?
Well, everyone's trying to get rich quick.
Yeah.
Schemes and credit cards everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But Clason's saying, slow down. Build a solid foundation with saving first. Discipline over flashiness.
Yeah, there's something to be said for those simple, fundamental principles.
It is refreshing.
Yeah.
Like this clear path in a world where everyone's overcomplicating money.
It makes financial wisdom less intimidating, right? No matter who you are or how much you know.
Exactly. But I also see why some people find it hard to relate to. Like hoarding gold in ancient Babylon. It's not exactly our reality.
True, true. But it's an allegory, right? The message is what matters.
Right. I'm not going to bury my savings in the backyard.
Uh-huh. Definitely not. But the idea is save and protect what you earn.
Okay, so we've got this book. People love it. Some find it outdated. What's the deal?
That's what we're going to keep unpacking.
Yeah.
This book makes you think, what does financial wisdom really mean? And how do we use it in our lives today?
Good question.
And speaking of perspectives, there's this reviewer, Anastasia Barbuzzi. She had some really interesting things to say.
Okay, who's she? What did she think about the book?
She's a financial blogger, and she was skeptical at first.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Then she found these deeper layers to the book beyond just saving money. Like what?
She says it's about things like determination, devotion, willpower. Like, it's not just about the money, it's about having the right mindset to be successful.
Oh, I like that. It's not about hoarding, it's about a way of thinking.
Right. She says the stories, they show you how to be resilient, to have hope.
Even when you're struggling.
Exactly. And she highlights how the characters in the book, they become wildly successful.
By saving.
Yeah, because they are dedicated and stick to those saving principles.
So it's like a blueprint for overcoming obstacles and reaching your goals, even if you're starting from nothing.
That's it. It's about that inner strength and determination to succeed.
Wow, this book is full of surprises.
All right.
But before we go further, let's sum up what we've learned so far.
Good idea. Help everyone keep up.
So, The Richest Man in Babylon has timeless wisdom, but also some old-fashioned advice.
Right.
We've seen how that pay yourself first idea can still work today.
Mm-hmm.
But we also have to remember that times have changed since ancient Babylon, and some of the book's ideas don't really fit anymore. Very true. It's important to be aware of that as you read.
And I think the most important thing is that it's not just about money management. It's about building a mindset for success.
Absolutely. It's about believing in yourself and working towards your goals.
Okay, I'm ready to keep exploring this book. Let's see what other treasures we can find in ancient Babylon.
Let's dive back in. You know, when we were talking about Arkad and his story, it really hit me how much he emphasized learning from people who are already successful. Like, remember when he goes to Algamish for advice?
Oh yeah, Algamish. That guy was full of wisdom.
Right, and that's something we can still use today. There's so much information out there about money, it can be overwhelming, you know?
Totally. Podcasts, YouTube, even Instagram.
Exactly. Everyone's a financial expert these days, so it's like, how do you know who to listen to?
Right, right.
And that's where finding a good mentor, someone you trust, that's key.
Like a modern-day Algamish.
Yeah. Someone who's already been there, made the mistakes, learned the lessons.
Okay, that makes sense. But where do you even find someone like that?
It could be a financial advisor, a mentor at work, even a family member, someone who really knows their stuff.
Okay, so it doesn't have to be this formal thing.
Not at all. It's
Yeah.
more about finding someone you can bounce ideas off of, get honest feedback,
I like that.
someone who's got your best interests at heart.
Okay, but here's a thought. We're talking about getting advice. But what if the advice in the book itself isn't, well, completely right?
That's where you have to be smart. Even if the advice is old, you got to think for yourself.
So don't just take everything at face value.
Exactly. Do your own research, think about your own situation, get different perspectives.
Don't just blindly follow. Be more active.
Yeah, exactly. Take control of your own finances.
I like that.
And remember, things change all the time with money. What worked back then might not work now.
So we got to stay flexible, learn as we go.
Exactly. It's a journey, not a one-time thing. You're always learning about money.
You know, it's funny. Anastasia Barbuzzi, the reviewer we talked about, she called the book like a starting point for learning about money.
That's a good way to put it.
It gives you the basics, but then you got to keep learning and growing.
Think of it like a foundation. The book gives you the foundation, but you have to build the rest of the house.
Okay, I like that analogy. So we start with The Richest Man in Babylon.
Get those core ideas.
And then we explore other stuff, learn about different strategies, all that.
Keep up with what's happening in the financial world.
Exactly. You know, it's cool to look back at this old wisdom and see how it still fits today.
It's amazing how much human behavior stays the same, right?
Yeah.
We all want financial security.
No matter what century we're in.
Exactly. The tools we use might be different, but the basic principles are the same.
Okay, let's talk about some of the specific tips in the book.
Sure.
One that really stuck with me was controlling your spending. Like, being mindful about where your money goes.
Oh, that's huge. That's something Clason really stresses. Needs versus wants.
Right, avoiding that keeping up with the Joneses trap.
It's so easy to get caught up in that, right? See everyone else with new stuff and feel like you have to have it too.
Totally. Like, you're not successful if you don't have the fancy car, the big house.
And Clason's got this story, remember? The guy who tries to impress everyone.
Oh yeah, he ends up miserable.
Totally broke and unhappy. Clason's saying focus on building wealth, not on showing off.
But how do you know what's a need and what's a want? It's tricky sometimes.
It is. It is. You have to be honest with yourself. Like, do I really need this, or am I just trying to impress people?
Okay, so it's like a gut check before you spend money.
Exactly. And sometimes it means being patient,
Oh, yeah. How so?
not buying something right away, putting your long-term goals first.
Laying gratification.
That's it. It's hard in today's world, but it's worth it.
I get it. Okay,
Uh-oh.
what about investing? The book doesn't really go deep into that, does it?
No, it doesn't. Clason talks about making your money work for you,
Okay.
but he doesn't tell you how to invest in today's market.
So what should people do? Like if they finish the book and want to start investing?
You got to do some more research, find good resources.
Okay.
There are tons of books, podcasts. You can even talk to a financial advisor.
So many options.
The book gives you that initial push, but then you got to keep learning.
So it's like the richest man in Babylon plants the seed.
And then you grow your own investment garden.
Love that. You know, another thing that stood out to me was about being prepared for bad times.
Oh, yeah, that's important.
Like setting money aside for when things go wrong. Sickness, job loss, stuff like that.
Clason calls it insuring yourself against misfortune.
Right. Back then, they didn't have insurance like we do.
But they knew they needed a cushion for tough times.
So that if something bad happens, you're not totally wiped out.
Right. Today, that might mean having an emergency fund, good insurance.
It's like that safety net.
Exactly. So that life's little surprises don't completely derail your plans.
I like that.
It's about protecting what you've worked hard to build.
Okay, so we've talked about getting good advice, thinking for yourself, and some specific tips from the book.
We've covered a lot of ground.
It's amazing to see how these old ideas still make sense today in our world.
It shows how much we're all connected no matter the time period.
We all want the same things.
Financial security, a good life,
And this book gives us a framework for achieving that.
a roadmap for a successful financial journey.
You know, it's funny, as we've been talking about this book, I've realized it's not just about, like, managing your money, you know.
Oh, yeah.
It's deeper than that. It's like a whole philosophy for living a better life.
I see what you mean.
Not just financially, but overall.
Right. Clason connects those two things, doesn't he?
Yeah. It's not about being rich. It's about using money to build a life you love.
Exactly. Like, remember that story about the guy who was always chasing the next big thing?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Never satisfied.
And then he learns to enjoy the journey.
Right. He figures out how to be happy in the present, even while working towards his goals.
That's so important. It's like, enjoy the ride. Don't just focus on the destination.
Exactly. Clarson's saying, find that balance. Be grateful for what you have. Build strong relationships. Those things matter.
Okay, so it's not just about your bank account. It's about a richer life in every way.
Exactly. And that's why this book appeals to so many people. It's about more than just dollars and cents.
Okay, so if we had to sum up this whole deep dive, what's the biggest takeaway? What do we want our listener to remember?
The key thing is, The Richest Man in Babylon gives us a framework for thinking about wealth,
Okay,
but you have to apply it to your own life.
right. Make it your own.
Exactly. Don't just follow every single rule. Take the ideas that resonate with you.
Like taking that ancient blueprint and building your own modern financial house.
Exactly. But to do that, you have to be willing to learn, to adapt, to think for yourself.
I gotta say, I started this deep dive a little skeptical,
Oh, yeah.
but I'm honestly impressed. It's more than just a money book.
It really is.
It's about living a fulfilling life.
It makes you think differently about your relationship with money, right?
Yeah. And it makes you think, what would I ask the richest man in Babylon if I could?
Oh, that's a good question. What wisdom would you seek from this ancient expert?
I don't know. That's for our listeners to think about. What would you ask?
That's something to ponder.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive into The Richest Man in Babylon. Thanks for joining us.
It's been a pleasure exploring this book with you.
And remember, building wealth is a journey.
Full of twists and turns,
But with the right mindset,
and a little bit of ancient wisdom.
you can achieve amazing things.
Keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep.
Until next time.